Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Good morning and welcome to the Inter-American Dialogue. We're pleased to have you here and have a conversation on money transfers to Latin America, perspectives on 2025. We have an interesting moment in the flow of money this year for a number of circumstances and dynamics. Some of them have to do with how the industry has been evolving and growing, mostly through a very competitive landscape that puts a significant, puts in perspective the role of a few very important businesses that have been operating for more than 25 years in the market. But we also looking at other dynamics, such as the role of emerging payments, emerging money transfer companies that with an innovative perspective have come to dominate also the key elements of the consumer behavior in the money transfer business. But in addition to that, some of the new trends that are taking place have to do with how do the consumer is interpreting current changes, current developments in the money transfer business. In a way that policy changes are affecting decisions on sending money. So we see, for example, that the first quarter of 2025, remittances for all of Latin America have experienced a similar increase as of last year, 7% growth. But for some countries like Guatemala and Honduras, they've grown 20% relative to the previous quarter of 2024. And that raises questions as to why that is happening. Is it because of competition, improvements in the money transfer systems? Is it because of the issues of policy, in immigration policy in particular, or is there anything else? So we're here to exchange a range of perspectives over these issues. We have 7 participants, 7 panelists who will share the broad range of issues that we are mostly confronted with. And I want to welcome the colleagues present. We have on the panel Ignacio de Loaizaga. He's the Director of Market Development for PayPal Zoom. Zoom is a money transfer company that has been in the business for over 15 years. And they basically started as an independent entity and later acquired by PayPal. And they became basically the money transfer arm for PayPal for cross-border remittances. We also have Paul Dwyer, CEO of the Americas Corporation, another company that has been in the business for over 25 years and has grown to become one of the most competitive companies in the business, in the top 10 for US Latin America. And its business model reflects mostly some of the key aspects of success that relate to resiliency and believing in the approach they're taking the risk on staying on their own approach. We also have Claudia Garavani. She's the head of business development and strategy at Felix Pago. Felix Pago, it's to many like the new kid in town. It's a company that started offering remittances about 2 years ago, and it has been quite successful in providing services to migrants using an innovative model. You will hear from her in particular what makes them different, but also the same, to the extent to which they are growing in the market in the US Latin American context. We have Eugenio Nigro, Vice President of Global Business Development for Remitly. Remitly, it's also a company that emerged close to Zoom um, a few decades ago, and started offering remittances to one or two countries, especially to Southeast Asia, to Vietnam. And then it started to grow in large parts due to their business model and in large parts due to demand on the consumer to send money transfers through what we call today digital mechanisms. And it's now basically one of the largest money transfer companies in the world, operating remittances to more than 100 countries, but also in the United States holds the largest market share for the US Latin American segment. We have Andrew Seeley, who it's accompanied us from the Migration Policy Institute. He's the president of the institute, and we're here. He doesn't do remittances, but we're here to talk about the people who send money, the extent to which immigration policies and the migration patterns themselves are having an effect or shaping decisions on sending money. There is a declining migration, and there is also, to some extent, a surge in deportations of migrants in irregular status. So what does that combination mean for the money transfer business in particular? And then we have my colleague, Kati Tomasowski. Kati comes from the regulatory environment. She is the executive director of the Money Service Business Association. It's an organization that basically is organized to provide advice, particularly legal advice, to money transfer companies in the landscape of compliance to money service businesses. But particularly at this point in time, she's also working on other issues that are becoming quite important for the industry. That includes legislation or proposed legislation on putting taxes on money transfers. So we'll hear all of this. We have them to try to cover the landscape that is basically shaping money transfers today. And with that, I want to start with an opening question to Paul, Ignacio, and Jean. I'm so sorry. We also have Juan Mendoza, CEO of Singly. I want to highlight that this is an interesting money transfer company, also an emerging one, like Felix Pago, who has been involved in the business recently, but has operations outside of the United States, but is serving a key market in Latin America, particularly in South America, growing quite substantially, also with technology, serving the Latin American migrant community, and it's coming with an innovative service that is also something that is helping shape decisions of migrants on how to send money. So sorry, I lost count of the number of panelists. But welcome Juan, Jean, Ignacio, Kati in the Zoom panel, and welcome to Paul, Claudia, and Andrew here in person. I want to start by asking a couple of questions regarding the industry to Paul, Ignacio, and Jean. Particularly, the money transfer business has been growing significantly. There's been a high level of competition in terms of pricing reduction. The transfer cost basically is not a policy problem today. It's more of a business challenge on how to continue offering a lower transaction pricing for the consumer. It's also become more competitive because the extent to which they're providing services to people includes a wide range of countries. You're no longer offering remittances to 1 or 5 corridors, but it's also basically your baseline is more than 40 corridors. And it's experienced a significant growth. So how do we explain the sustained growth across the board? Is it migration? Is it the US economy? Is it the role of intermediation? Is competition in the industry actually driving more consumers to use money transfers? The size of the informal money transfer companies has reduced significantly. The use of informal transfers, basically, it's zero, at least in the US, Latin American corridor. That might even include countries that we don't talk about a lot, like Cuba or Venezuela, for example. So how do we explain that? And second, what are the main challenges the companies have faced today, and what do we expect for 2025? So I'm going to open that question to Paul, Ignacio, and Jean, who have been involved in the business for quite some time and can offer a perspective in the long term. And then we have a question for Claudia and Juan, who had been basically growing recently with their business models, particularly with the role of innovation and technology. And the question is there a difference in your business that separates your success from all the other players? Or is it simply the persistence of sticking to your technology approach that made you successful? And where do you see the company moving forward? We were talking to Claudia. There is a strategic thinking of where to go. Singly, it's a company that operates money transfers in South America and has an eye on key countries where the industry hasn't been very active, like Venezuela, for example. And then a general question for Kathy and Andrew with regards to policy. Andrew, and Kathy, how would you describe the situation with remittance regulations and migrant policies with regards to deportations? You know, we have a number of new immigration policies to some extent. We also have a significant number of legal challenges, and we don't know where what the outcome will be. Today, for example, it was supposed to be the end of the humanitarian parole, but there is a legal court battle that stopped that. So where are things standing in that regard? So I'm going to open it first to Paul.
Well, first of all, can you hear? I know you guys can hear me online. Is this microphone working? Can you hear? Okay.
Yes.
First, thank you, Manuel, and thank you to the dialogue for hosting this. If I remember the questions from the beginning of what you were saying, basically, where's the growth coming from, and what are the biggest challenges that we see in 2025? So the growth for the industry is different than the growth for individual companies. Individual companies slug it out and try to gain share of the existing market, and then the market grows, and everybody's trying to get a piece of the new business. So the principal driver of growth is the level of economic activity in the United States. If the economy is strong, if there's a strong demand for labor, then the market works. Labor finds that demand, and a lot of that labor is either documented or undocumented, but it finds the demand for labor, and the fruits of that labor are sent home. And that's the fundamental driver of growth. Now, in the current policy environment, that's certainly challenged in that there is a desire to induce people to self-deport. I think the reality of forced deportations at the scale that has been that President Trump described, in the election campaign, and that has remained the stated policy goal of the administration, is very, very difficult to execute. Just mechanically, the vast numbers of people, very, very difficult. And the implications of trying to speed up ways to do it, like denying people the rudimentary hearing before shipping them out of the country, is going to continue to face a lot of legal challenges. So that means that the atmosphere, in order to induce self-deportation needs to be an atmosphere that really makes individuals think about what's in their best interest, what's in their family's best interest, and the jury's out on how effective that's going to be. Those are individual decisions that millions of people and families are going to have to make, and anecdotally, some are making them to return to their home country, and others are not. And so I don't think anybody has a crystal ball and can say a year down the line, what those numbers are going to be like. In terms of the informal versus formal market, I think you're right. There's very little in the informal market, because for many years I think that the growth was partially a transition from informal methods of sending to formal methods of sending, as the formal methods of sending became cheaper with the entry of Zoom and Remitly and Western Union bringing down prices, and MoneyGram, everybody, V Americas has been at it for 25 years. We came at it as a low-priced alternative, and we and others, Dolex, Seagate, when back in the day, everybody was competing, and so prices came down, and the formal methods became just as attractive as informal methods, or more attractive economically. So all that migrated, except in countries where you have really significant distorting exchange controls. So Venezuela remains a very heavy informal market, because if you send through formal channels, you receive a fraction of what you receive if you send through informal channels. Cuba's the same way. So there's a correlation between the rigidity and market distortion of the exchange controls and how much of the volume goes through formal channels. And those two countries, Venezuela and Cuba, also pose significant regulatory issues that keep a lot of the companies that have driven prices down in other markets out. So what do I see is growth? We're still seeing substantial growth on a company level. We're seeing average send size go up in the first quarter of 2025. That could be people sending savings home before they decide to leave. It could be just people are making more and they're sending more. It's hard to tell. In terms of the challenges, certainly new entrants and competition from new entrants, and the phenomenal job that Felix Pago has done to grow its business in a short time. And you can't, no hay competencia pequeña, right? There's no small competitor. Right? So we're keeping a keen eye on that. But that's par for the course. That's just competition, right? But the environment is a unique policy environment in the United States, and that for not just the remittance market, for pretty much every industry you can think of, poses challenges in navigating waters that haven't been charted before.
Thank you, Paul. Ignacio and Jean, please.
Yeah, some ideas from PayPal, Zoom. I think that, as you mentioned, Zoom was a leader in digital sending probably till the early 20s. It was acquired by PayPal, who at the time wanted to build a super app. So they essentially embedded the Zoom experience for folks that wanted to use the PayPal app to send money out of the PayPal ecosystem. And that, well, the decision at the company level was to drop the promotion of a dedicated app that was Zoom. And the market taught us, first lesson, if you want to grow, focus on your customers. So the customer prefers a dedicated app. So we lost a lot of market share. I think there's a good lesson there. Then 2024, we went back to focus on the dedicated app, the Zoom app, with price adjustments. We resumed marketing and renovated our payment network of payers, and that brought us back to growth in 2024, and that we intend to accelerate in 2025. So besides what Paul mentioned about the political economic situation and the uncertainties, I think we then benefit from the tailwinds of digitalization and mobile penetration, both on the send and the receive side. I think they're not independent. So newer generations of migrants are digitally native, so it is easy for them to make the decision to use digital as well as retail. And I'm not saying it's exclusive, but that's a tailwind that we have. And I think in the current times, there might be also a perception of higher safety if you're sending from home than you are walking into a location. I mean, this is our all hypothesis because despite the situation, we see, as you said, a good Q1. So we thought it would be catastrophic, but there we are, and it's still growing. And on the receive side, it's worth mentioning that disbursing digital is way cheaper than disbursing cash. So our partners need to maintain a network, have cash in the remote locations, have personal there, while the deposit into a bank account or into a mobile wallet is way more efficient. So we think that using these new digital disbursement methods, ACH networks that are popping up, of course, Pix is well established, but Spin is growing fast in Mexico, and other Latin Americans will have their own ACH networks operating soon, gives an opportunity for broader reach, lower costs, and faster disbursement. And as you said, on the send side, competition is working, prices are going down, so efficiency becomes very important. Yeah, I think that as far as the challenges are concerned, we talked about political uncertainty. Maybe I would mention that it is a challenge that many receive economies are still relying so heavily on cash. Again, cash disbursement are more onerous. And unfortunately, that does not depend on just offering the option on our app. It has to do with the maturity of the receive market. So you have markets like Colombia or Brazil that are very digital, and most of our disbursements are digital there. But other countries, cash still rules. So in order for a mobile wallet to grow like Nequi or Yape in the remittance space, they need to the receiver has to be able to use it for payments broadly in the receive market, and that's not happening in many of the Latin American economies. And another challenge I would mention, and I will pass it on to Gene because I think that's one of his favorites, is some disbursement partners control fees and FX for certain disbursed corridors, and that's not good for competition, and that keeps prices up, and that does not benefit our customers and their receivers. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gene.
Okay, Manuel, before I answer, thank you, Ignacio. Before I answer the question, I want to follow up on a comment that you made at the beginning. You mentioned that everything is different and also everything remains the same. And that's true. It's very different from the send side. And the revolution that's going to take place now is on the receive side. We can go to Mexico. Everyone knows about the issue with SPAY. Sooner or later, all the transactions in Mexico are going to go via SPAY. And what you're going to have is a collapse of the pricing. I don't know if it's going to be 6 months, a year. I wish that could happen today. It's not going to happen today, but it's happening. You have in El Salvador 365. If you connect to 365 in El Salvador, you're going to be able to do bank deposits to all bank in El Salvador. In Colombia with Breve. In Colombia, my point of view is that talking about what's different is that it's going to be like Pix in Brazil. There was a collapse in the prices in Brazil. So the industry is evolving is going to evolve from the receipt side. Why are we growing? I think that in the case of Remitly, everyone knows we're going because we are very customer centric. My boss, I love everyone that I work with, but my boss is not the CEO of the company. My boss is a customer. My boss is a person that is sending money and is using Remitly. And from that perspective, we always focus on what's best for the customer. The other thing that has been also very successful for us is that the marketing investment. But it's not only talking about marketing investment, is that the marketing has to be very specific because we all speak Spanish in Latin America, but we're different. An Argentinian sender is different than a Guatemalan sender. So it takes a lot of work to tailor your message and to talk to the customers in a way that relates to them. So you have to create an emotional and a rational connection with our senders. The challenges that we have today, Paul covered them very well. So I have nothing to add on that regard. The only thing is that we have new players in the market, like the great job, like you mentioned, Felix Pago is doing. And I was doing some research yesterday, and there are 10 companies today that they are trying to copy what Felix Pagos is doing. So what that shows you is that the industry is moving that way, because if you use a company like Felix Pagos, you don't have to download the app. So it's how the technology is evolving. And then you also have new entrants into the marketplace, like the Visa, the MasterCard, and the large banks. So that's a challenge for us, for the industry. But that's also going to change the way how the industry evolve. I don't know how the industry is going to look, 2 or 3 years from now. I think that probably is going to look very different. 10 years ago, no one was talking about an app. And from, the digital companies, most of our volume comes from the app, not from the website. So I'm very optimistic about the future of the industry, but it's going to be very different in a couple of years, especially in like with Breve, with Pix, with 365, and with Spay in Mexico. And then, like Ignacio mentioned, you have companies that they control some countries, and that's going to change with the introduction of like the Breve, like the 365, if we can connect directly to them.
Thank you, Jean. I think you raised important issues, and it is kind of strange that in some countries there is like a return to the late 90s with regards to oligopolistic controls, and it's kind of anachronistic to a large extent. Everybody's talked about Felix, so I'm going to ask Juan first to talk about Zingli, and then what makes you different, and where do you see moving forward as the company is growing, is offering to some extent a service that many companies are offering, but at the same time it's becoming attractive to the consumer. And so Juan, please welcome.
Hey, thanks everyone. And I'm happy to be the outsider here and the new guy. I love the new guy on the block with this bald head, but yeah, it's a new kid on the block. And extremely I have Ignacio there. Yeah, thanks for the support. But I'm happy to be calling today and from Venezuela and give you a perspective on what's happening on the Latin American markets and with boots on the ground and what we're seeing. So I'll give you very quickly 30 seconds on Zingli, but Zingli is a fully regulated fintech out of Panama. But we operate in Panama and out of Panama to many Latin American countries. So we have a cross-border issuance approval from the regulator and from Visa in order to be able to include digitally and financially millions of customers in Latin America. We currently hold more than 1.3 million users, of which many of them are in Venezuela and in Colombia, Peru, Panama, and Guatemala. I think I'll put it as a phrase of why we believe we're doing well and why we believe that we need the strong big players to collaborate with companies like us in order to continue to improve and grow the market. I'll give you a phrase that I think summarizes a little bit of what the industry should or will look like in the following months. And we love to say that companies like Zoom or Remitly or MoneyGram or Western Union of the Americas or anyone here are going to be, you're going to send companies like us. We're going to include digitally and financially. And our focus needs to be on ensuring that we enable enough forms of use of funds for the receiver to be able to use the funds the way he likes and the way he matures. So if I break that down, when I say you send, we think about collaboration. We think about direct connections from companies like you guys connecting directly to companies like us who are focused on including receivers. Including means enable them digitally, enable them a solution that has a form of payment, in our case, a virtual physical Visa prepaid card, and other forms of payments like PIX, like Transferencias 3.0 in Argentina, like the Cámara de Compensación in Panama, like SPAY in Mexico. But we still strongly believe that the role will be on the forms or use of funds the way the individual likes. So the mother or the receiver in Guatemala, she's going to mature digitally. So she might still be using the card to go collect cash, or or going to pay at the point of sale, or still will like to receive the money straight into a bank account or go pick up at the store. So our focus is inclusion. Our focus is partnering with companies like many of you for you able to send. We're going to do the strong effort that I think Ignacio and Jean both mentioned, is that we need to focus for digitalization to really ramp off, or really go off to the world, is that we need to do the work of really include digitally with forms of payments, with direct connections, enabling companies that we don't have to control FX. We can leave that to ours, reducing fees. That's going to be our motto. So I'll leave you guys with that thought that Sinly is the receiver player, ready to collaborate with any of the big players, ready to include financially millions of Latin Americans, and also to do all the direct connections needed to hold funds in a US dollar denominated account in Spanish. And that's, for many of us, that's business. For millions of Latin Americans, that's a dream come true. So happy to be here.
Well, we lost temporarily Juan. Juan, you're back. You can continue if you want to finish your thoughts.
Sorry, I barely I left first. I don't know. I hope you listened to the first part, but I left for the last second. So these are the struggles of Latin America. Bad internet connection, but I hope you were able to hear okay. And again, so happy to be here with this great team and this great panelist. And Manuel, thank you for all that you do from the dialogue for this great industry.
Thank you very much. I have to say the intra-Latin American money transfer market is a challenging one. It's one that has grown in demand due to intra-regional migration. Intra-regional migration has increased from less than 4 million migrants 15 years ago to, I don't know, Andrew, but we're probably talking about 12 million migrants within Latin America today. And money transfers, my estimate, we were talking about at least 6 million intra-regional money transfer markets. So with Sinly in the business, this is an important opportunity. Other companies that were members of the Remittance Industry Observatory were active intra-regionally. More money transfer, for example, play a key role for Argentina, for example, Bolivia, among other corridors. So it's great to have you. And now, without further delay, like people say, we have Felix Pago, who's going to tell us about the magic silver bullet.
Hello. Well, thank you very much, and no pressure. I'm very, very happy and excited to be here with all of these panelists that have been in the industry for much longer than us. Yeah, Felix Pago has received a lot of awesome praises today. And I want to spend some minutes just talking about why we're different, what we are doing differently. And I can say it's basically 3 things. The first one being that we're solely focused on the Hispanic or Latino immigrants in the US, as opposed to most countries and most companies in the industry that have expanded globally, that have covered a lot of corridors intra-regionally from the US to other continents. We praise ourselves and we're very focused in truly understanding our customer. And as Jean said, just within the Latin American context, every customer for every corridor is very different. Each time we open a new corridor from the US to that specific country, we spend a lot of time understanding the specific idiosyncrasies. I have a hard time saying that in English, sorry, of the customer. And we wanna focus on depth and not breadth. So that's one of the key things that makes us different in my mind. The second piece, which was mentioned quite a bit, is the fact that our product is a conversational product. We're fully based on WhatsApp. We don't have an app, so that's less friction for our customers. WhatsApp is the biggest conversational app used in the region with 85+% penetration. We love to say within Felix that Latin America runs on WhatsApp. It's the operational system of the region. People not only use it to communicate, they use it truly to run businesses, coordinate payments, track packages, everything. So we are fully built on WhatsApp, fully conversational. Our bot is trained with AI. It understands slang, which is awesome. So again, to Jean's point, every time we open a country, we take time that the bot understands the type of Spanish that that customer speaks. And then the third point, which is something that was scarcely mentioned today, is that we use stable coins on the back end as a matter to reduce costs. And honestly, that is what has made us been able to compete with a lot of bigger players that have been around for a while, have, of course, lower cost of capital, et cetera, et cetera. But that is, I think, the third piece that has made us different. I do want to highlight, though, that our customers do not want crypto. They don't care about stable coins or crypto. They want fiat, US dollars on one side, and then pesos, quetzales, the local currency on the other side. So we do that for them seamlessly, fast, and in a cheap way that we pass on those savings to them, as most of the companies here have done as well. But yeah, those I would say are the three things. And then to complement, one of the challenges I would say in new entrants. So Paul and I were yesterday at an event, Circle, one of the biggest stablecoins in the world, issuer. Honestly, the word remittance was mentioned, I don't know how many times. So there's a whole lot of people trying to get into this market with the use of stablecoins. I think it's going to be harder because from what I see, the people that are in that world don't really understand our customer. However, I think it's only a matter of time that those two worlds collide. And I do see a lot of interest of these new entrants wanting to serve this market. So I would add that to the previous question.
Thank you, Claudia. Indeed, the subject of stablecoin and cryptocurrency has become a sexy topic especially cryptocurrency remittances in the cryptocurrency world. There is a lot of work to be done on their side. My projection so far is there is very little appetite in the consumer side. But again, stablecoin, it's perhaps the vehicle that may move things differently. And then there is the ACH, which is something of a growing phenomenon in most of Latin America. It does have regulatory hurdles in some places because protectionism from the banking industry is deep. And they don't want fintechs to be, to put it bluntly, involved in be part of ACH transfers. And that poses a number of challenges too for financial inclusion, but also for businesses. So with that, I want to switch to Kathy on the US side. There are, again, a number of new dynamics. One of them is a number of proposed pieces of legislation on putting taxes and a few other things. So can you give us a sense of what does that mean for the industry and the consumer?
Thank you, everyone. So as you noted, this has been a very dynamic season of legislation. With the new administration has come a lot of activity to support the administration in their desire to reduce immigration, deport individuals, and they propose to do that with two vehicles. One is that they believe that they should tax the remittances, and that would give them money for a number of things, mostly goes to law enforcement. The other vehicle that we saw is that they want to have individuals identify that in order to not have to be taxed, they would have to determine that they're a US citizen. So those types of bills are very problematic for a number of reasons. I think it's important to understand that, like last year, in 2024, we saw 6 states propose some types of legislation that would tax remittances. And those were driven predominantly to increase the tax revenue for the states, right? And in the 10 years, we'll celebrate 10 years, the association in September. We have never seen activity like this. And we have currently, and I think we're doing pretty well, but right now there are 18 states with over 26 bills that we have been working very hard to help the legislature understand what the ramifications are of these types of changes. You know, I have traveled to more states than I have ever thought I would, and spoken to more people about this. And I think, you know, what's really important for us is to help people understand, just like you are saying. I think it was interesting how you say you have to understand your customers. Within each state that we go to, we have to understand the perspective of the legislator. What is driving them? And how is that, how do you best communicate that this will be not good for them? You know, Paul talked about, you know, the industries that send home. So in Alabama, for example, there's a big construction industry that migrants are helping to, you know, service there. They don't want their population going. There was a lot of myths about, you know, usage of, and everybody on this phone that's probably been in the industry for a while, the different color phones where someone could walk into an agent and get information, pay cash, and then remit their money. The legislators thought that that was all illegal, right? So you had to explain the process to them. You had to explain how we're regulated. In other states, you know, they are concerned about their military. So it's a very, it's a really challenging environment right now. And, you know, we know that we will never change someone's mind, I think, but our job is to make sure that they understand how widespread these effects are on small businesses, large businesses, consumers, and their economies, so that they will step back and reassess that this is really not going to accomplish what they are trying to do. You know, our industry is so large, but they still associate the industry with only drugs, you know, or money laundering. So it's really important to highlight all the positive functions that are being done, all the business that is being done. Each day, and actually as I'm sitting here this morning, I got another bill that just dropped. You know, we don't know, normally, you know, states plan for their bills and you have some sense of what might be forthcoming. This season has been extraordinary in numbers. And, you know, we're nearing the end in May of most seasons. and we're still seeing bills drop. This morning, one just dropped in Louisiana. So it's really really challenging times. And the other point that I will make, because we saw some stuff with FinCEN go out, is that there was a geographic targeting order for 30 zip codes that was requiring companies to do a CTR, cash transaction report, which normally is done at 10,000 level, and now they're requiring it $200, which is a very, very challenging burden on companies. You know, we at the association worked with trying to bring others together, help educate FinCEN to help them understand how this was not going to accomplish the task that they wanted, which was to stop money going to certain cartels. But it's fallen on deaf ears. You know, they've moved forward, and, you know, we'll continue to push back and educate, but it's a very, you know, I'm an optimistic person, but I like to think that we are in some very toxic times with people's perceptions and, you know, having to really go to battle every day is how I would say. And the last piece that I will remind everyone is that, you know, we do want to share good news, you know, put forth positive policies. And we look for our members and others in the industry to share with us that news every day, because we produce, sorry to give a little plug here, Manuel, but we produce the MSBA Daily News, and we have almost 3,000 readers, you know, both US based and internationally. And we do try to not just inform on what's happening, but also I think it's a vehicle for us to share all the benefits of the services that we provide to individuals, to companies. And I think that that's important to message out as well.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you for your commercial, although there was some radio interference there, but we hear you, we hear you. Andrew, let's talk about migration.
Nothing's going on.
Nothing, right?
No.
Yeah,
Business is
1,000 arrivals at the
functioning
border.
system. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. And, you know, I am the one non-remittance person here. So as Manuel pointed out, so let me just sort of give the broader environment. I mean, you know, a lot of things are moving in different, that have effects in different directions on remittances. One is we've seen a huge drop in entries at the border, right? I mean, down to levels that are not daily levels, that are not seen, about 700 a day of encounters at the border, that haven't been seen, you know, since daily records were started being kept in 2000, and we think may even be down to 1960s levels if you annualize it. On the other hand, there is a lot of movement on removals of the unauthorized population. We think, by the way, that the unauthorized population, our calculations were about 13.7 million people as of mid-2023, but I think we should assume that now that's somewhere between 14 and 15 million, right, when we start to see 2024 numbers. That's a significant increase over a few, you know, there was a number that was stable between 10 and 11 million for many years, right? And it was a significant increase over the past 4 years. About 4 million of those people, we can't tell exactly how many, but about 4 million have some sort of what we call twilight status, some sort of temporary protection. They have a stay of removal, they have humanitarian parole, they have DACA. You know, there's about 4 million people among the broader group of 13.7 or more that have that. We have seen the administration try and remove some of those temporary statuses, TPS. That makes a difference, certainly on employability. We have seen that on CHNV parole as well, although that was stayed in the courts, as you noted, and I'm, you know, we'll see if they appeal it or not. That one, actually, they may just decide to let it go, because most people's humanitarian parole will run out eventually. They have, you know, we've heard talks of massive deportations, but the numbers have gone up through March from about, you know, 310 last year a day, 310 detentions of unauthorized immigrants in the United States, not at the border, but within the United States, in the interior, to about 650 a day. So it's a doubling. It is significant, but last year was a particularly low number, right? I mean, this is, if you start to game it out across the year, it is still going to be a fairly low number. Last year was a low water mark, so you double a low water mark, and maybe they get up beyond 650 a day. I mean, there is some evidence that they are scaling up. It still won't, by the end of the year, we're not going to be at 1 million deportations or anything like that, right? So on one hand, you could say, this is a sign of failure of the Trump administration, that, they put this out as their big platform, and they're not really getting the kind of detentions they were looking for. Removals are even less than this, have gone up even less, because many people obviously have to go through process before they can be deported. But I think there's also, and as a result of not getting large numbers, we've seen the expulsions to the Use of the Alien Enemies Act, the expulsions to El Salvador. We've seen the use of Guantanamo, things that are really flashy, the deportations to third countries, Panama and Costa Rica particularly, because the numbers aren't there, right? So you sort of start to look around the margins and you start to try and create fear. But I would also say in the long term, they do have some tools in the toolkit that may become important. We're seeing them connecting databases in ways we haven't seen before. Access to Social Security for purposes of immigration enforcement is particularly noticeable. We'll see where that goes, but there's a lot of information there that could lead them to people who are potentially deportable. There will be a large increase, maybe even a 6-fold increase in the ICE budget. If you look at least the proposal that Republicans have put forward, I mean, it's not a 50% increase. It's not a doubling. It is a 6-fold increase, right? I mean, that is the incredible influx of resources. You add in a new set of tools in the databases with an vastly increased amount of resources, and you could see out over time how the numbers could increase significantly. So I could tell you the story that says, they've largely failed to, over the first 2 months, almost 100 days, to bring up significantly bring up the numbers of interior deportations and interior detentions. But I can also tell you a story of how this could change over time, right? And this could become much more meaningful. And I think, my only comment on the remittance side is I would say there's probably a plausible case to be said that at least some people, hard to know if it's on the scale or not, but some people are probably looking at transferring money back to their country of origin just to make sure that they have access to their bank accounts and their resource and their savings in case something happens. And part of, at least some anecdotally, we hear that some people have done that. Not everything is about undocumented migrants. However, there's also changes in the legal immigration system. Some of this is increased vetting, for example, social media vetting. Obviously, the end of the refugee program was the one sort of major change, at least the pause. There's no official end. There's a pause in the refugee resettlement program, but we assume it will be sparsely used in the future. We've seen, according to reports, about 1,700 students who've had their student visas revoked. A few of these are the high-profile cases where the State Department has done this, but the larger way this is happening actually is people being removed from the CVIS database that ICE maintains of people who are in good standing with their student visa. And it is a really obscure process, actually. And there's a lot of litigation going on around this because it's not clear that that's the correct process to follow. Where simply ICE decides that because of a past infraction, they're no longer in good standing. When the university goes in to check the database, they discover that the student no longer is in good standing with their student visa, but there's no notification that goes to anyone in the process. And so there's a lot of litigation going on this. We'll see where it ends up, but clearly, this is a moment where the assumption that you have a legal visa is not necessarily sufficient. We've seen a few of this with people who have employment-based visas, much smaller number, particularly as people who come back into the United States. And certainly what we're seeing as a result of some of this is a decrease in travel from some countries, right? And I think that is, I think we will see an impact, obviously, in international students in the United States. I don't think the U.S. will empty out from international students. It is an attractive location. People will keep coming, but I think some universities will see the numbers go down. You will also see at some point probably a modified travel ban. They have floated this for a while. It has not materialized, but various versions have popped into the press over time that could have a significant impact on people not only getting student visas and employment-based visas, but also travel visas, right? The way it's been floated is different categories of people depending on countries' compliance on a series of different criteria having to do with whether they take their own citizens back in removal proceedings, but also perception of risk. And so we could see some impact down the road that begins to hit the legal immigration system without actual changes to legislation, which is unlikely in Congress, right? And in theory, changes to the legal immigration system have to come from Congress. But also, as they discovered last time in the Trump administration, there are ways of altering the legal immigration system, not by going to Congress, but by actually how you implement the procedures, right? And they do have discretion on this. And so this may, may be less directly linked to remittances, but it could certainly have secondary effects in terms of who's in this country and how many people come. And I do think, let me just finish with one comment, which is, I think we may be, for the first time, in an unusual situation in this country. I mean, for years, I think many people have been saying we need an immigration system that is, based on employment needs, on workforce needs, and we should be thinking about skills and talents. But many ways, with people coming across the border at different moments, it has managed to work out, right? We have managed to maintain a workforce, often with unauthorized migrants, but there has managed to be some sort of balance, over time. We're now at a moment where the US population is aging quite rapidly. Almost all growth in the labor market is coming from immigration, where legal immigration may slow because some of the measures that are being put in place, and where it may be harder for people to come into the population, come into the country unauthorized. I think it's interesting to look down the next 2 or 3 or 4 years and see, will this shape a different debate in the United States around immigration? I don't know if it will. Paul and I've had this conversation on and off. I'm not sure we have any idea what's going to happen in politics 2 or 3 years from now, even a year from now. I think it's worth thinking that combination we haven't seen before. And so it may lead us to a different point in how we begin to talk about immigration.
Thank you, Andrew. Your analysis brings back the word that is now in the industry talking about uncertainty. And it is uncertain times. It's paradoxic in the sense that we haven't been at any other point in time where the ability to use data to have more precision in your analysis, it's the best time, and at the same time it's highly uncertain to determine what the data can tell us about the current process. But with that, I wanted to just, before I open the floor for questions and answers, I just have one general question to everyone, and is that the first trimester, the first quarter of the year shows an increase in remittances. And when I looked at the data, and we have this chart here that points more or less to that matter, is that the key determinant factor that has shown an increase in remittances is the average amount remitted, that migrants from October to March basically increased the average amount from, I think it's $370 to $400. So, what do we make of that? As explaining, in the context of, as Andrew was talking about, declining migration. On the one hand, 12,000 arrivals at the border last month, and with $400 sent last month too. And on the other hand, beyond that, when we looked at the migrants' budget, the average monthly income of a migrant today is under $3,300. So you are practically remitting nearly 20% of your income. So will you be able to sustain that amount moving forward? So, I want to open that question to everyone, and perhaps we start with the people in the Zoom audience.
I think I can confirm we've seen that average transfer value, as we call it, raise, and it might be a short-term effect. So maybe Q1 is happy, but not Q2 and Q3. We agree with Andrew that it might be an effect of migrants that feel threatened and want to have their savings available in their origin countries. But that's as far as our analysis goes.
So I'll take another stab. Our belief is that if we take away, that it's impossible to take away the macroeconomic factors that are going to affect, the amount of money based on the ability of people's savings, what's going to be happening with society, the amount of immigrants or migration is going to occur. One of our beliefs that is strongly, and we see a strong correlation, is that if we continue to digitalize money movement and digitalize away from cash on both the sender and the receiver side, we have already been seeing a substantial increase in the average transaction amount. So if we normalize and take away the macroeconomic factors that are impossible to take away and focused on a normalized data, digitalization is having an impact and will continue to have an impact on higher spending amounts. Especially, our belief is that if you send in US dollars and maintain the purchase parity in US dollars of that amount, people are going to be willing to send larger amounts that are not going to be affected by inflation or devaluation in many of the Latin American countries. So a lot to see, and it depends on a lot of people, but digitalization is definitely one of the keys to increase that average transaction amount.
Thank you.
Yeah, my point, I agree with what Juan and Ignacio said. The other hypothesis that I have is that there might be that senders are bundling transactions, so they pay less. If we charge, let's say, $3, $4 for a transaction, you send two people, send 200, it's a lot cheaper for them. But we don't know what's going to happen next. That's my honest answer.
Kathy, any thoughts?
I would say that from my perspective, it's hard for me to determine what would happen in that area. I think that, if we see some of this taxation move forward, whether it be at state levels or whatever, perhaps people might try to get more money sent out before that happens. In other cases, depending on how states do it, they may try to send smaller amounts. So they're under, those guidelines that are being proposed in some areas.
Thank you. Paul?
I'd like to comment on two things that have come up. One is the state tax initiatives, and the other is the use of stable coins, and maybe tie together some of the things that have been discussed. First, with respect to the state taxes, market distortions drive the use of informal channels, whether those market distortions are exchange controls on the receive country or taxation or penalty fees that are applied on the send side. Some of the proposals have been to apply penalties of 25% of the send volume if someone can't prove their legal status. Now, nothing would drive business into informal channels faster than that. Nothing. People just will not do that. They will find a way, and there will be businesses that crop up, unlicensed, unregistered, or just people that are doing that. And from an anti-money laundering and law enforcement perspective, there's no better place to hide a tree than in a forest. If you're trying to hide bad activity, you love that a lot of people are using informal channels, because formal channels are tightly supervised and regulated, and we and every other responsible company in the industry have a good collaborative relationship with law enforcement seeking to identify money laundering. It's bad for the industry, it's bad for everybody. You drive that business underground, good luck. And I think that's one of the core messages that Kathy has been very successfully getting across to the state legislatures. With respect to stablecoin, I just want to make sure everybody understands what's happening and how the event that we were at, as Claudia mentioned, it was the announcement of something called the Circle Payments Network. If you haven't heard of it, look it up, because it is. I've been in this for 25 years, and I've never seen anything that has the transformative potential that has, because what they're talking about doing is really bringing together two things. A disbursement network that is competitive on the receive side, and that is bundled with a settlement asset that is very widely accepted in USDC. So bringing those together really does have the potential of reducing back office costs. And it means nothing to the consumer. It doesn't mean that the consumer's touching crypto, touching stable coins. It's all about treasury operations. It's all about how we refresh the money that we're sending to recipients. So the other side of that is how the money gets distributed locally. Everybody who's in this business has built private networks. The reason our companies have value is because we have private networks and we have the ability to reach consumers. What Felix brilliantly did, which is what PayPal brilliantly did back in 2000, was create a new way to use existing infrastructure. PayPal did it with the US ACH system, and Felix did it with WhatsApp. Why is it easier to send with an app, with a WhatsApp conversation? You don't have to download the app. In the conversion funnel, if you don't have to download something, many more people are going to do it. Technology is making that easier. You can authenticate somebody without being in an app environment. You can authenticate somebody and let them store payment credentials without downloading an app. That changes things. It just makes it much easier. So that I'm not surprised there are 10 companies. I'm surprised there are not 50 companies trying to replicate that. So, that is a transformation that's happening. And on the payment side, everybody likes their toll booth, right? If you're a bank and you're controlling the toll booth to get money deposited into your bank, you like that revenue. So you like dealing with companies and forcing companies to use that road and pay that toll and not use the public infrastructure, whether it's SPAY or PIX or 365 or any of the, and that is just, that's the kid with the finger in the dike. That's just a question of time, how long that's going to last. But there are transformational things happening in the industry, and at the end of the day, I think what Gene said is absolutely right. You gotta, your customer is the boss, and the companies that are customer focused and understand what the customers want and need are the companies that are going to succeed. But there are real infrastructure changes that are on the cusp of happening that have never really been. There have been lots of aggregators that say they have global capability, yada, yada, yada. They don't really, and it's tough to settle with them. But this is different because it bundles the settlement with the distribution in the real-time networks in lots of countries. And that's transformative. It really just puts the value on the origination side and is going to make the payout side much more of a competitive landscape. So I know that was not an answer to your question, but as I'm hearing the comments, I just wanted to make sure people understood how fundamental some of the things that are happening are and how bad the remittance taxes are for everybody.
That's very hard to follow. But fully agree with everything you said. I wanted to maybe add something. For the increase in average, I think everything has been said. We don't have any additional hypothesis there. But I do want to say that there are 65+ million Latinos in the US. I know that the deportation news is very sobering, but honestly, I don't think that huge part of the population is going anywhere. I love this piece of data that is going around in the news quite a bit lately, but if Hispanic or Latino immigrants in the US were a country, we would be the 5th economy in the world, which I love. It's honestly very exciting to hear. Those people have businesses, they employ people, they save, they invest. They might do it in very different ways than the average public does. And that's what I think makes me very excited to be in this industry and serve that customer. So on an optimistic note, to close out my comment.
The optimism, Andre?
I think that's right. And I think actually, I mean, I think we may see some turbulence both in legal immigration and certainly with people who are in the country without legal status, right? I mean, I do think there is a possibility that we'll see increases in detentions and deportations over time. Not, look, the largest number of people that have been deported in a year, about 250,000, the end of the Bush administration, I mean, the Obama administration. Could they double that? Perhaps. I mean, I have no way of knowing, right? I couldn't even estimate, but I don't think we're talking about millions of people, but I do think hundreds of thousands. It'll be turbulent. I think we could see drops in legal immigration because of measures that are taken, and we could certainly see, continued, I've always been a skeptic that you can only use enforcement to stop people from coming to the border, but there is some evidence that if you use enough force and enough changes, you're willing to throw everything at it as your top priority, it is possible, right, that they succeed in keeping the numbers low. Not zero, certainly. Some people will always try, and some people have very compelling reasons to want to come, and some people are willing to take risks. So some people will, but the numbers could stay very low, right? I do think that will eventually lead us back to but the majority of people who are remitting money, the vast majority of to Latin America, of Latinos in the U.S. are here legally, or citizens, are, some people are second and third generation, right? I mean, it's a broader universe of people. And I do think maybe where we end up after some of this also is a healthier conversation on what sort of immigration system we want. Now, I don't know when that comes, right? And whether it is an actual healthy conversation or none, or it's a chaotic conversation. But I do think that a pause on immigration at the same time where we have an aging society is going to lead us to a place where we actually have to reckon with what we want in the future. So it'll be interesting to see. And that will all have an impact one way or another on remittances, which all of you are better at figuring out than I am.
Thank you, Andrew. We have a few minutes left. I wanted to open the floor for questions and answers, and the people in the online connection too. I think there are a lot of issues that are pending question marks. The possibility of, some people are discussing of expanding the H-2B visa, for example. That may be a new opportunity to bring guest worker programs more up to speed, given the declines, the paradox of tariffs increases potentially affecting inflation at a time when you increase deportations, which means making labor, somewhat more expensive. So how do we address those issues? And then the competitive landscape in the money transfer industry comes in the middle. So anyone has any questions? Yes.
Manuel, we cannot hear it.
I should turn my mic off.
Yeah.
Apologies. Yeah, the question was the golden visa, is it coming with guarantees that there's no money laundering involved? I think it's too early to know what the golden visa is. It probably is not a visa. It probably is a repurposing of the existing investor visa, because without legislation, you can't create a new visa, right? So, but it probably is providing some benefits to people, under that same investor visa who can commit to 5 million. They're going to come up with a package of things, I'm guessing. And it seems like the Commerce Department is the one that, just from news reports, is taking the lead on this, which suggests that there will be some sort of, it's not DHS, because this is ultimately not a visa question. It's more a set of conditions that you get if you're willing to invest 5 million. But whether it comes with investigations, I would have some of the same questions, actually, right? Yes.
It's a very valid question. Any other questions? Yes.
Evolution of PICS and SPAY and other government-led payment systems, and how you see that evolving now in Latin America, but also if you see something like that as an example for the United States, as the United States they try but never actually make headway there, it seems.
So the question is to discuss the evolution of real-time payment systems in Latin America, like PIX and SPAY, and whether there's something there that might be replicated in the United States. Is that so? PIX, for those that don't know, it is a system created by and run by the Central Bank of Brazil that allows for real-time deposits into any bank account in the country. Brazil has always been a very heavily banked country since the hyperinflation that they had in the, I guess, 70s, early 80s. People got bank accounts because cash was just not a tenable way to store value. So it was already a heavily banked economy, and remittances going into Brazil have always been 95% plus going into accounts and very little in cash. Draw a contrast to Mexico, where 20 years ago, maybe 10% or 5% of the remittances were going into accounts and the rest were getting paid out in cash. SPAY is an interbank transfer system within Mexico that allows for real-time transfers into any account in the country, but it's not as easy as PIX, okay? It's made a little intentionally difficult. Creating the clave, which is the secret number or the number that you need in order to land money in an account in SPAY, involves one digit that only the bank knows. So it's tough to use SPAY to land money in an account if you only have the account number. That's one of the challenges. Nevertheless, the volume grows and grows and grows because it is much more efficient. Companies can manage their own FX. They're not required to buy the FX from the bank that is terminating the payment. That creates competition. Competition drives down prices. Basic economics, right? Okay, so those systems are growing and they're being replicated everywhere. Peru is about to launch one based on UPI from India. So that's coming. No question about it. In the United States, ACH has been around for forever. Real-time payments and FedNow are kind of the analogs, and they're growing, but they haven't reached the kind of wholesale adoption. But you have other private garden type infrastructures like Zelle and Cash App and Venmo that allow for real-time transfers very quickly. So because the alternatives are already there in the U.S., I don't see the Fed-sponsored real-time payment system taking over individual payments the same way that it has in Latin America. But the real-time payment systems are efficient. They breed competition, and that's what I was saying before. That the structural changes that are coming, the payers that try to hang on to that toll booth and resist the tide are going to find themselves left out, and others that provide gateways that embrace that competitive environment are going to do very well.
Thank you. Anybody in Juan?
No, I think I'll just add a more really forward-looking 10 years down the road. I truly believe, and I think many of us believe, that the financial borders of countries are coming down. And we already see that. Money move, I think remittances, the word remittances is probably going to evolve into just money movement. And it's going to be cross-border, across countries, and you're not even going to know where the money went, came, was. You're paying Google from many countries in America today, and actually you're paying in Norway. So the only thing that I believe is a threat to those local systems that are being built is that they're closed-loop domestic systems. They're not interoperable or connected to the rest of the world. If we see a really global network like what USDC is or Circle is doing, what Visa and MasterCard did 50 years ago, I think the only threat is that if interconnected payment networks globally really evolve, those domestic schemes are always going to be left out. But That being said, what has been done from PIX, from 3.0 in Argentina, from SPAY, has really provided competition and the global networks to adapt.
I would like to add something. The interconnectivity is already happening in Southeast Asia. If you go to the Philippines, the Central Bank of the Philippines, as an example, is connected with the Central Bank of Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Indonesia, and China wants to connect to that interconnectivity. And you also have the Central Bank of India that wants to connect to that interconnectivity. Who is being left behind is us, because the world is changing outside the US very quickly.
Thank you. We have one more question.
We haven't touched on this yet, and thanks to all the speakers, it's been really interesting. What about the demand for global USD in the current context? Like, I know we see a lot of demand for it, but how have others seen this kind of changing, and how might we expect that to evolve?
Anyone wants to take the question? What about the demand of USD?
I can take a stab and blend it with stablecoins. So I think the demand is still going to be there for many countries where the local currency is subject to inflationary pressure. We ran a pilot last year with stablecoin in Africa. Essentially, the problem citizens in those countries have is they don't have access to a hard currency to buy goods and services that they might need. They might be a freelancer in Nigeria, but you cannot buy the tools you need with Naira. No Western company will take that. So essentially, we supported, instead of sending dollars, which is regulated, has a lot of complications, we started sending dollar tokens, PayUSD, PayPal stablecoin. And funny, the rates that you get, the FX that you get from those flows are higher than the official bank rates, because essentially people are paying the Naira because there's no other way to access hard currency than stablecoin. I think that's a sign, answering your question, that the demand for hard currency will remain despite the uncertainty in the current political situation.
Thank you. Juan?
Developing countries, the US dollar is still a dream. And it will become a dream for individuals to be able to save in not a stable coin, but a stable currency. So I think demand for when you're serving underserved individuals, the US dollar will still be the winner of how you want to see your store of value maintained. So I do still believe that's going to be the case.
But that's also changing. Like when I have been to Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, they don't want USDs. They want euros. And has nothing to do with geopolitics, has just to do that they prefer euros. And Rwanda is another country that, to my surprise, they prefer euros. I think that in Latin America, we will continue to have the USD. But in different parts of the world, that is changing. And it's changing quickly too.
Although the euro prefers dollars.
First, Gene is just flexing his passport there, right? But you know, there used to be the concept that no company could have a credit rating higher than the sovereign debt, the sovereign rating. It was kind of the limit, because the company's operating within the context of a national economy where they're capped. If the capital markets believe that economy is capped at a certain level, the company can't really get above that. And individuals have had an analogous situation where they are stuck with, the economic management or mismanagement that their sovereign authority that issues the money that they work in and live with has. And that has only been not true, terrible construction of a sentence, for rich people, right? High net worth individuals have always had the ability to maintain assets in other currencies. What we're starting to see is a real democratization of that capability, and lots of different wallets that allow you to hold stable coins or other, stable coins in a hard currency. And, current efforts, or maybe not efforts, I shouldn't say that. Current activity notwithstanding, the US dollar is still the reserve currency of the world. It still is. That's not preordained, and it could be changed and it could be damaged. And I think some of the really, crazy stuff that's going on has, made that teeter a little bit. You've seen it in the bond market. You see, that's what caused the pullback from some of the really, really aggressive stuff that was being floated. For individuals, I agree 100%. US dollar is the dream, right? Especially in Latin America. I mean, and it's just perceived as a safe way to store your wealth. And when your local currency is not, and inflationary pressures are high, it makes perfect sense. And technology has made that possible in a way that that traditional banking systems never made possible. And that is both an opportunity and a challenge, certainly a challenge to local financial institutions, but a challenge to people that try to build things in that infrastructure to avoid, regulatory problems and play by the rules. So it's an interesting area, quickly evolving, and WISE has led the charge on that. But not for the brick and mortar world, right? For the higher income digital world. So it's
lots of
well,
compliments from the Americas to Felix Pago. Wise is wise. That's pretty cool from the industry. Well,
credit is due.
thank you very much to everyone, to the audience online and the audience in person, and to the speakers. We definitely see interesting developments. I don't know what the right word, I don't think is uncertainty. I remember in 2009, people kept using the word resilience with so much ease, liberal use of the word, without understanding, what that really means. But definitely there are interesting developments taking place. And at the bottom line, I think we are at an intersection between political, economic, and financial cycles. And definitely the dollar, the value of the gold, for example, how it has increased is to some extent a sort of a vote of political confidence on certain decisions in the political environment. But they may be cyclical, and I think that we have to continue seeing how migration and remittances are interplaying to continue benefiting the industry, but also developing countries. And so thank you very much for your participation, and look forward to more of this engagement. Thank you to the audience, Jean, Juan, Kathy, and Ignacio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.